Everyone I've spoken to, as of now, Gio Reyna there's no way he's on the World Cup roster. For me, Pepi's the front runner up top. I don't believe that Juve or Dortmund were even asked to release their players.
Hello, Sunshine. Welcome to another episode of the State of the Union podcast. I am David Statman Mosse. Alexi Lalas is not here. I will tell you why in a minute, but we have a very able replacement. You know him, you love him. I am joined today by Fox Soccer Insider Doug McIntyre. Doug, how are you?
I'm doing well, Mosse. Good to see you, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Before we get started, we like to talk in this opening segment about things we've been watching on television or otherwise. And I did check out Happy Gilmore 2 on Netflix. Now, I was told by multiple people going in that it was the worst movie ever made. So viewed through that lens, I didn't think it was that bad, but it certainly wasn't good. I know you told me you haven't watched this one yet, but you did watch the original, which is a classic.
I did, yes. Yes, so would have been hard to beat that one no matter what, Mosse, especially 29 years after the original came out. But I'll get around to seeing it at some point.
What have you been watching, Doug?
So I know you've recommended Slow Horses in the past, Mosse. I did finally get around to watching the first episode yesterday on an airplane. It's one of the best first episodes of any TV show I have ever seen, so thanks for the rec there. I can't wait to see the rest of the series, but it had me on the edge of my plane seat from the second it started. It was really good. And staying on a British kick a little bit, Sherlock, one of my all-time favorite shows that ran from 2010 to 2017. My wife and I watched it when our kids were really little. They're now 13 and 10, and we've been watching it with them. So to see it through their eyes for the first time has been really cool. Just one of the greatest shows ever made, Sherlock, in my opinion.
Well, Slow Horses, as you mentioned, is a favorite of mine. I'm jealous that you're going to get to watch all these seasons fresh. So enjoy Jackson Lamb, River Cartwright and Company, because it is a terrific show. I mentioned that Alexi is not here. He is in D.C. as part of this World Cup task force. And an interesting image has leaked from his time in D.C. For those of you watching us, you can see Alexi Lalas in the Oval Office acting like the President of the United States, which is an absolutely scary thought. At the conclusion of today's podcast, I am going to have some thoughts on Alexi's politics. I've bit my tongue long enough. No, I'm kidding. We're not going to go there. But nevertheless, it looks like he's having a good time in D.C. He will be back for our podcast next week. Doug, any thoughts on this image of Alexi in D.C.?
No.
Leave it alone?
He's been there a lot, though. It's not the first time he's been there in the last few months, so I expect we're going to see more of him in D.C. as we approach the World Cup here next summer.
Absolutely. So, Doug, let's light this candle. You've been writing up a storm lately, and about a week ago, you wrote an article in which you attempted to project the U.S.'s 2026 World Cup squad. Now, we should stipulate we're in the middle of a transfer window, so this is fluid. There are some players whose futures we're going to discuss in a minute who, depending on where they end up, it could perhaps change your perception of where they stand for 2026. But as of a week ago, the roster you put together, the starting lineup consisted of Matt Turner in goal, Serginho Dest and Jedi Robinson were the fullbacks, Chris Richards and Tim Ream the center backs. In the midfield, you had Adams and McKennie sitting and Malik Tillman as the 10, and then Pulisic and Weah on the wings and Ricardo Pepi up top. We'll go from back to front. Matt Turner in goal. Despite the fact that Matt Freese started all the Gold Cup games, you still see Turner as the odds-on favorite to start in 26?
I do, or at least I did when I wrote it. I have to point out that this was before Matt Turner's proposed transfer to French club Lyon hit a snag. Looks like the club, as you've mentioned on past pods, is trying to get out of that transfer. So it was with the idea that he would go to Lyon and be the number one there, and if he did that, he would be in prime position to continue as U.S. number one. Freese, obviously, like you said, did get the chance in the Gold Cup, but Matt Turner's been the number one for the U.S. since before the 2022 World Cup. He has that experience, and yeah, now it's in flux. We'll talk about him a bit later, but I'm less confident in that selection than I was when I wrote that, for sure.
Good tease, my friend. And then at center back, you have Tim Ream, even at his advanced age, so you don't see any better option emerging between now and the World Cup.
It would be nice if one did, but I think based on where we are today, and given the fact that Ream has served as the captain under Mauricio Pochettino in just about every game, if not every game he's played, he started all the games that mattered at the Gold Cup, and he's got a good understanding, a good partnership with Chris Richards. So as of right now, and again, a lot can change. Tim Ream is about to turn, I think he's about to turn 38 years old in September. So the wheels can fall off at any time, but he's still going strong. I don't think he's had a particularly great season for Charlotte. He's not playing as a traditional center back. He's kind of playing as a left back or on the left side. But he has that comfort level and had a very good Gold Cup, I thought, with Chris Richards. So until someone comes along and beats him out, and again, it's really about a lack of challengers behind him, same as in goal with Matt Turner. No one's really stepped up. I thought that maybe Miles Robinson would get a run during the Gold Cup. That didn't happen. Walker Zimmerman was a late add to the squad. He barely played. Mark McKenzie barely played. So right now, where we stand today, Tim Ream and Chris Richards are the clear starters in my mind. And until something changes, I have them as my starters next June.
Malik Tillman also had a very good Gold Cup. We talked about Pochettino needing to unlock that key and getting his national team form to mirror his club form. I think he finally did that this past summer, and so you see Tillman now as a starter in 26.
I think so. I think it depends on how Pochettino wants to play. There might be some games where he goes back to the MMA midfield with Yunus Musa in there. Of course, Musa missed the Gold Cup. We're not exactly sure where he's going to be playing next year. We don't know exactly why he missed the Gold Cup, so hard to say how he comes back in, if he comes back in. But, for all the talk of Diego Luna and how well he played this summer and how he took his chance, Malik Tillman was the most impressive U.S. player for me. I think he has some real quality. He got a run of games for the first time in his national team career, and I think he took full advantage of that. He's got to move to Leverkusen. We'll talk about that in a bit too, but great landing spot for him. He goes into his season with a lot of confidence. He was born and raised in Germany, so shouldn't be very hard to adjust to that league, moving from PSV, where he got some great experience, won 2 Eredivisie titles, helped his team get to the Champions League knockout stages both years he was there. So when you look at trajectory, I think Tillman's in a good spot heading into next summer.
And then Pepi up top. You've always been partial to Pepi over Balogun. You've made that clear on previous appearances on this podcast, and so you're riding with Pepi as the starting center forward in 26.
Yeah, but I'm not confident about that either, Mosse. I mean, the last time we saw Ricardo Pepi play, and I know he's played a few preseason games for PSV, was back in January when he was scoring a game-winning goal against Liverpool in the Champions League. So I don't know how he's, going to come back from his injury. We don't know how Balogun's going to come back from his injury. He missed most of last season with shoulder surgery and then missed the Gold Cup with an ankle problem. So both of those guys have a lot to prove. But again, we know Josh Sargent wasn't on the Gold Cup team. Not sure where he's going to play this year. We're going to talk about that as well. So still an open striker race, but when Balogun has not played for Pochettino yet. I don't think he's even come into camp. And Pepi has played a bunch and he scored a bunch. So for me, that gives him the inside track. But again, not a selection I'm fully confident about now. But for me, Pepi's the front runner up top.
And then in terms of your subs, the ones that caught my eye, you do have Yunus Musa in the midfield. A lot of people are wondering about him under Pochettino. You have Sebastian Berhalter and Diego Luna, but no Gio Reyna. So You think as of now, Gio is on the outside looking in?
I don't think there's any way anyone can project Gio Reyna on this roster as things stand today, on the World Cup roster for next year. The guy hasn't played much soccer over the last 4 years at all, and we all know how talented a player is, that he can be a useful player if he's fit, if he's healthy. He has not been fit, he has not been healthy for a number of years. Barely played in the Club World Cup for Dortmund. We think he's going to go to Parma. We're going to talk about that as well. And I think that would be a good landing spot for him, but he needs to play. And until he's playing, I cannot have him on the roster. And I haven't talked to anybody, we have lots of conversations, all of us do. And everyone I've spoken to, that I really respect, or most people, agree that as of now, Gio Reyna there's no way he's on the World Cup roster based on what he's done on the field lately.
And then you have three center forwards, Pepi, Balogun, and Josh Sargent. No Patrick Agyemang, despite his Gold Cup.
Again, this was written before a couple things happened. So Agyemang, as we know, moved to Derby County in the English Championship. Great move for his pocketbook. He's going to get paid a lot more. Good opportunity for him. But I don't love the fit. I mean, Derby County's finished 19th out of 24 teams in England's second tier last year. It's a really hard league. There's going to be an adjustment period, you would think, for Agyemang. So I'm not sure that that's the best place for him. They only scored, I think, 48 goals in 46 league games. So you can't imagine he's going to get tons of chances with that club. And at the time I wrote it, it looked like Josh Sargent maybe was going to go back to the Bundesliga where he started his career with Wolfsburg, and I thought that was a terrific place for him to go. And if he was able to go there and score goals, that would be one way to play himself back into Pochettino's good graces. That doesn't look like it's going to happen. We're going to talk about Sargent as well and where he might end up. But I think the road is going to be a bit harder for him if he decides to stay in England, which it looks like he might do.
Well, you've teased it quite a few times, so we might as well get to this transfer portion of the podcast. Let's start with Tim Weah. He's clearly on his way out of Juventus, but it's all gotten messy. They had agreed a deal with Nottingham Forest. Timmy didn't want to go there. Where he does want to go is Marseille, but Juve have not agreed a deal with Marseille yet, and Timmy's agent came out and criticized Juve for making it difficult. He thinks that Juve are salty that he didn't want to go to the Premier League for more money. So it's all in a little bit of limbo right now. Keep in mind, Marseille have signed a Brazilian winger, Igor Paixão, from Feyenoord for a lot of money. I don't know how that affects Timmy's situation. Nevertheless, what do you make of it?
I'd like to see it if it happens. Great spot for him. Tim Weah, as we know, spent time in the French league, won Ligue 1 with Lille a few years back, broke in with Paris Saint-Germain at the beginning of his career. So he'd be comfortable there. He speaks the language fluently. Attacking league. Weah only started about half of Juve's games last year in Serie A, in the Champions League. He's a really important player for the US, and I'd love to see him playing week in and week out somewhere. It'd be a great move if it happens. The posturing, I'm not too concerned about. We're still in July here. There's another month to go of the transfer window. This always happens, as teams go back and forth and haggle. I expect the deal will get done at some point. And if it does, like I said, great spot for Weah if it happens.
Incidentally, not to revisit all the absences this past summer at the Gold Cup, but given the fact that Tim Weah played only 45 minutes for Juventus in the Club World Cup and is clearly not in their plans for next season, I wonder if he might have not been someone who would have been better off playing at the Gold Cup, much like Gio Reyna.
It would have been great to see, but I think the thought was that those guys weren't going to be available, and that's how Pochettino went into the summer. I don't believe that Juve or Dortmund were even asked to release their players for the Gold Cup. So I agree with you, but I mean, to me, it speaks to the fact that he's on his way out the door there at Juventus, Tim Weah. So I wasn't shocked that he didn't play much. I wasn't shocked that Gio Reyna didn't play much either in that tournament.
Another American who could be on his way out of Juventus is Weston McKennie. We go through this every summer. Yet again, you're seeing reports that McKinney's on the outs there. There's been some criticisms of his weight and reporting back for preseason. What do you think? Is this finally the summer where McKennie says, the heck with it. If you don't want me, I will go somewhere else?
I mean, Weston's been for a guy they've been trying to push out the last 2 years, he's seemed determined to stay there, and he got his wish the last 2 years and played really well. I mean, and I almost wonder if Juventus knows that this is a way that they have to motivate him, by doing things like take away his locker and his parking space and his jersey number and all that sort of stuff to get the best out of them and to get the best out of McKennie. And, so I'm not going to be fooled again. This is, like you said, the third straight summer we've gone through this. Wes stayed the last two times. I'm going to bet that he stays as well. And he was a guy that did play quite a bit for Juventus during the Club World Cup, including their knockout match against Real Madrid when they were eliminated. So I think Wes will end up staying there and will continue to be an important player for Juventus as he has been for the last number of years.
Yeah, I know it bothers U.S. fans, but there's a faction of media and fans in Italy who view McKennie's influential role the past couple of years as more of an indictment on Juventus than it is a commentary on McKennie as a player. They can't believe that Juve have sunk to the point where Weston McKennie is their best midfielder when you think about 10 years ago when they got to the Champions League final, that midfield was Pirlo, Pogba, and Arturo Vidal. So it's not entirely fair with Weston, but he does have to deal with that. You mentioned Matt Turner. Speaking of things getting messy, so Lyon did get their relegation overturned, but as part of that arrangement, their American owner, John Textor, had to divest himself from that club. He was the one that had cooked up the Matt Turner deal. The people now in charge want to wash their hands of that agreement, so they're exploring any loopholes. I don't know if there's really the vibe there from Matt Turner to go play for Lyon. So the New England Revolution are sniffing out an opportunity here, and they're evidently interested in bringing Matt Turner back to Major League Soccer.
Look, Matt Turner needs to play, and the thing that worries me about this from a national team point of view is the later you go in the transfer window, especially for keepers, only one keeper can play at a time for a club. Teams are going to have their keepers set. They're not going to go into the season without knowing who their number one is. So the longer this drags out, the less and less chance that Turner's going to be able to find anywhere in Europe where he's going to be able to step in and compete for a starting job, and that's what he needs. We saw it last year where he moved, I think on deadline day or right before, on loan, season-long loan from Nottingham Forest to Crystal Palace, where he didn't play one Premier League game. He only played, I think, 4 cup games throughout the course of the season. Of course, Palace won the FA Cup, but Matt Turner needs to play. Pochettino said that. He'd get the chance in Major League Soccer. Obviously, he was a goalkeeper of the year with the Revs. He earned himself a transfer to Arsenal ahead of the 2022 World Cup. So not the worst thing in the world for him to come back to MLS. I don't think it's his first choice. He's been pretty adamant saying he wants to stay. He believes he's a Premier League level keeper, or at least a keeper that can start somewhere in Europe. I think that ideally that would be the best situation for him. But again, time is running out, and if this transfer to Lyon doesn't happen, I think he could do worse than ending up back in MLS and playing week in and week out, with the World Cup looming less than a year from now.
Gio Reyna, as you mentioned, does look to be headed to Parma, who finished 16th in Serie A last season. They do have an American owner. And it sounds like you're okay with this move if it happens.
Yeah, I mean, look, you'd rather him go to a team that finished a bit higher up the table. You don't want to be going to a team in a relegation fight when you're an attacking player. Usually you're on a team that doesn't have the ball much, but Parma actually does try to play a good style. They do try to actually play soccer, and I think that it would be a good spot for Gio if it happens. The first sniff we got of this was a couple weeks ago. It seems that Gio would be quite fine going there. The terms have been agreed to, but there's a sticking point in the valuation, the transfer fee Parma is willing to pay. Gio's got a year left on his contract. This is a player that was valued at 50, 60, 70 million euros at one point, and now Dortmund's just trying to get whatever they can for him, basically, but they want to get as much as they can, and Parma hasn't met that valuation yet. So again, we're early in the transfer window, or we're halfway through. There's a lot of time, before the deadline comes. Most deals get done at the 11th hour because there's some pressure. So I do hope it happens. I think it's a good move for him. The rumors that he was potentially coming back to LAFC, there was absolutely nothing to those. I wouldn't hate that either. Again, I think at some point the guy's got to play, but I think I'd rather see Gio play in Serie A than MLS, all things being equal, given how many other U.S. players are already in that league.
And finally, Josh Sargent did turn down a chance to go to Wolfsburg. He did not want to move back to the Bundesliga. He had an unhappy time with Werder Bremen earlier in his career. But it sounds like you think that was a mistake on Sargent's part.
I wouldn't go that far, Mosse. The word is that it was for family reasons. Sargent's got a young family to think about. I would never, criticize anyone for putting their family first. That's what you're supposed to do. And look, he's got options potentially to go to 2 clubs in the Premier League, Burnley, Leeds. And yes, those are teams that were promoted. Again, not the greatest situation for a striker, but he'll get paid a lot of money. And if he is able to score some goals, that might be able to catch the attention of Pochettino, because for my money, Josh Sargent was the best striker in the championship last season, and that wasn't enough to get him on the Gold Cup squad. So he definitely needs a change of scenery. Of those 2 options, I would love to see him at Leeds, just because I think it would be funny, more than anything, given the history of the last few years with American players and coach. there. But I mean, it would take a lot of guts for Sargent to go there, because that fan base could turn on him very easily if he doesn't score early on. It'd be fun to see him playing alongside Brendan Aronson in the Premier League next year. And I think it's clear Sargent has to go somewhere to try to get on the World Cup team. So I'm curious where he lands.
In terms of the global transfer market, it does appear that Alexander Isak is going to end up going from Newcastle to Liverpool, which would crown an absolutely bonkers summer for Liverpool. They've also signed Wirtz, Ekitike, and others. Now, Liverpool did sell Luis Diaz to Bayern Munich. Barcelona, having missed out on Diaz and Nico Williams, they went for Marcus Rashford. And I was hoping as a Brazilian that as part of this left-winger carousel that Rodrigo, if he has to leave Real Madrid, would end up at Liverpool. But it sounds like that Diaz money would be to fund Isak. Arsenal would have been the other interesting option for Rodrigo, but it sounds like they signed Madueke and now they're going for Eza. So I'm not sure where that leaves Rodrigo. He might end up staying at Real Madrid. So as a Brazilian, that's what I have my eye on the remainder of this transfer window. But Doug, overall thoughts on non-American transfers? What's caught your eye in terms of the market overall?
So I love Luis Diaz as a player. He's so much fun to watch. Such a great player for Liverpool. So curious to see how he does at Bayern. The last time we saw a speedy sort of left wing type go to Bayern didn't work out so well. Sadio Mane a number of years ago. So I'm curious to see what Luis Diaz does. But just to go back to Rodrigo for a second, Mosse, I mean, I think that guy's maybe one of the most underrated, if not the most underrated player in European soccer. He'd be a superstar anywhere else. He's overshadowed at Real Madrid. We know, his heroics in the Champions League for them the last number of years. I understand that, he's going to want to go to a club that's playing Champions League football next year. It's really difficult going from winning that title every other year to a team that is maybe not playing in that competition. But what a brilliant player, and I'd like to see him go somewhere where he can, maybe get a little more attention on himself. I'm not sure what it is. He's not a flashy guy. He's obviously on a team with guys like Mbappe and Vinicius and Bellingham, so he kind of flies under the radar. But I'm a huge Rodrigo fan, and I'd like to see him go somewhere and sort of establish himself as a standalone superstar with a team that's all his own.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. Next item, another edition of the Leagues Cup is off and running. The tournament got underway last night. We had 6 matches. Now it is a radically different format this time around. It's only 18 MLS clubs, the top 9 finishers in each conference last season, with the one caveat of San Diego taking Vancouver's place. And then you add those to the 18 Liga MX clubs. They're separated into 2 different tables, one with the 18 MLS clubs, one with the 18 Liga MX clubs. Each team will play 3 matches, all MLS versus Liga MX, and then the top 4 finishers in each table will move on to the knockout stage, quarterfinals, semis, final. And in the league phase, every match that's tied goes to penalties. You get 3 points for a regulation win, 2 points for a shootout win, 1 point for a shootout loss, 0 points for a regulation loss. I know it all sounds convoluted, but I like this better than the previous format.
Yeah.
Nobody thinks MLS is that much better than Liga MX. In fact, we know that's not true because we have the CONCACAF Champions Cup results to prove it. So for MLS to dominate to the degree that they did the past couple of years, you knew something was out of whack in terms of the conception of this competition. So I think they've taken some steps to level out the playing field a little bit. Before we get to last night's results, in terms of the format, what do you make of it?
I like it. I mean, it was just too big before. And it's funny you say only 18 MLS teams qualify. That's a lot of teams. Still a 36-team tournament. So yeah, I do like it. And the thing I like the most, Mosse, is that you're not seeing, intra-league games where you have MLS teams playing MLS teams or Liga MX teams playing Liga MX teams in the Leagues Cup. That never made much sense to me. I don't think it really resonated with the fans. Certainly not for the MLS teams. So I really like that every single matchup we're going to get is a cross-league match. They're compelling. I mean, I always like watching Mexican teams play against MLS teams. They're hard-fought games. I was up way later than I should have been watching matches last night. So I enjoyed the first night of action. And it's been a crazy summer of soccer, as we know, and it just doesn't stop. I mean, the other part of the format I like is that we've got games every day. I mean, there's another 6 games tonight. We're going to get – there's just so much soccer to watch. And for people like you and I, Mosse, that love this game and love to watch games, there's always games on, it seems like, this summer, no matter when, no matter what time of day. But I'm not complaining about it at all. I think it's great.
Now, we're taping this on Wednesday afternoon. There are a slew of games tonight. MLS teams could do well, and by the time you hear this podcast, this narrative might have shifted, but at least in the opening night on Tuesday, Liga MX dominated. There were 6 matches. It was 3 regulation wins for Liga MX, 2 shootout wins, and then MLS got 1 shootout win, Montreal over Lyon. To run down the other ones, Pachuca beat San Diego, Puebla beat NYCFC, Tigres hammered Houston, and then Mazatlan over LAFC on penalties, and Toluca over Columbus on penalties. Yeah. Angel Correa scored twice for Tigres in that win over Houston. He is going to be a problem for MLS teams in the coming years. That was a terrific signing for a Liga MX team to get him. What else caught your attention in that opening night?
Well, Diego Lalas scored a terrific goal in his match. Again, Montreal, the second to worst team in the Supporters' Shield standings, beating James Rodriguez-led Lyon. Very good match. I thought that was a good one. But I'm really looking forward to the next set of matches, Mosse. I think that the first night was really the appetizer. I know that the games will already have happened by the time most people hear the pod. But Rodrigo De Paul expected to make his debut for Miami against Atlas on Wednesday night. And then and we're going to get Club América against Real Salt Lake. Another big one, certainly for U.S. national team fans. Check out how Diego Luna does against the richest and most important team arguably in Mexico. So some bigger games to come, and yeah, it's an interesting tournament, and I'll be watching all of it.
I know this story is a few days old, but I haven't had a chance to talk to you about it, so I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the whole Messi All-Star game, Michigaz. Do you think MLS made the right decision in suspending him? What did you make of how that played out?
I was pleasantly surprised that they did suspend him. It would have been very easy for them to say or to make up an excuse why he should have played. We've seen this in other sports. It doesn't bother me at all. I mean, whether it's NBA or NHL, there's guys that have missed all-star games and they get suspended for the next league game. And it's these games are important to leagues. They're important to stakeholders and partners and all on the business side. But they're not always important to players. And I think for someone like Messi or Jordi Alba, it's a completely foreign concept. And they were quite happy to miss a league match against Cincinnati, even though that was a big game against a good team. They've got a ton of Leagues Cup matches come on. There's not much downtime for these teams between Leagues Cup games. I think there's only 2 or 3 days between games, between Miami's first game and second. So I don't think they're going to be losing any sleep over the fact that Messi and Alba were suspended for that Cincinnati game in July. They've got bigger fish to fry. They want to win an MLS Cup this season. That's Miami's main goal. They would love to have gone further in the the Club World Cup. They'd love to win the Leagues Cup again. Obviously won the inaugural version. Messi did before he ever played an MLS League game. But after the way things went in the MLS Cup playoffs last year for Inter Miami, it's MLS Cup or bust for them. So I don't think it'll be the last game Messi gets rested for this season.
Doug, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to do some Ask Alexi on the other side. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. It is time for Ask Alexi minus Alexi today, so it's Ask Doug. And a reminder to submit a question, you can call the mailbox at 657-549-2297, or you can hit us up on any of these social media platforms using the hashtag AskAlexi, and you can follow us at SOTU with Alexi. Doug, we have 2 questions today, both on X. First up, Herbie Hockey says, in terms of U.S. men's national team transfers, are clubs trying to capitalize on the World Cup in USA by getting their club names attached to the host country players? It seems we have too many players hung up as clubs try to squeeze extra money for players they don't use or intend to use. Herbie, I'm going to disregard the second part of your question because I don't think it necessarily connects to the first part, but the first part is interesting. Doug, do you think there's anything to the fact that with a World Cup taking place in the United States, American players have any added cachet in the transfer market that European clubs see a value in having an American player in their team in the season leading into a World Cup in the United States?
I don't think we've seen that play out yet during this transfer window, Mosse, and the short answer is no. I don't really think so. I think that when you look at someone like Christian Pulisic going to Milan, certainly there's a huge uptick in jersey sales, from the United States, and there's a business component of a move like that the club benefits from, and they're happy to. But the bottom line is that clubs are going to go after players that they think can help them win on the field. If that player happens to be an American and is marketable and can be marketed to the American public before the World Cup, that's great, but that's not going to be the primary consideration. If Christian Pulisic couldn't play soccer, it wouldn't matter if he was American or not. That's not the reason Milan signed him. They signed him because he's a great player. He's been their best player the last couple of years. He's also sold a ton of jerseys, and Milan's very happy to have him going into the 2026 World Cup. But that wasn't the reason they signed him. It's just an added bonus. Clubs want to win. They want to succeed. Coaches want to win and succeed. Their shelf life is too long. Sporting directors and managers are not thinking about that. I know business folks are, and that's a reality that all teams have to deal with. They are businesses, but I don't think it's a huge factor when clubs are making decisions on who to sign. I really don't, Herbie.
So bottom line, you think Herbie should stick to hockey, not soccer. Next question.
I do like his handle. Yeah.
Yeah. Next question. James Hendel asks, Thomas Muller, discovery rights, thoughts? And what James is alluding to, Thomas Muller is on his way to Vancouver. Tom Bogert and others reporting that today. But this deal was held up for a few days because Cincinnati actually owned his discovery rights, and Vancouver had to go over some loopholes to make this deal legit. And so that's sort of shined the light on this whole issue of discovery rights. People that think that MLS have too many rules, this is one thing they point to that they think is holding back MLS from competing in the global transfer market. Discovery rights, for people who don't know, every MLS team gets to put together a list of 5 players who are not in the league, and they would have first dibs on those players if they choose to come to MLS. So if another team wants to sign somebody on your list, you might have to pay some money to that team to get them off their discovery list. Yep. It can all be a bit convoluted. Before we get into Muller actually joining Vancouver, where do you come down on the whole discovery rights issue?
Well, I hate the name, first of all. The branding of it's terrible, because the idea that you could discover Thomas Muller, a World Cup winner, one of the best players in his generation, who's been an absolute superstar at one of the biggest clubs in the world for over a decade, is just silly. So call it something else. You're leaving yourself open as a league, MLS, to criticism when you're talking about discovering, players that are household names. And this is nothing new. I mean, it was almost 10 years ago where I think the Philadelphia Union discovered Zlatan Ibrahimovic and had them on their list. But generally, Mosse, I don't like it. I don't think, Thomas Muller was never going to go to Cincinnati as far as we know. He's never had any affiliation with that club whatsoever. Why should they be entitled to any compensation for a player that, they've never had on their books just because they put him on a wish list? Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me at all. So I understand that some roster restrictions and rules are necessary, but that's one that I would like to see go away in the next few years here.
And what do you make of Muller as a signing for Vancouver?
I think it's a huge signing for them. What a coup for that club. Easily the biggest signing in their history. They entered MLS back in 2011. Great fit for him. Vancouver's a great city, and very interesting season for that club because they made a coaching change in the offseason. Nobody thought they would be very good. The club was put up for sale. There was some question if they were even going to stay in Vancouver. So a lot of question marks, negativity surrounding that club, and all they did was go out and make the final of the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and now here they are signing Thomas Muller, who I think will do well in MLS. I think he's still got something left in the tank. He's a great professional. He's a guy that players in Vancouver will learn a lot from, just the way he goes about his business and handles himself. So great addition to the league, and I'm glad that Vancouver finally got their man, even though it was held up a couple days.
Vancouver is a great city, by the way. I spent a month there way back in 2015 covering the Women's World Cup. The other big one that might happen is Heung-min Son going to LAFC, potentially as a replacement for Denny Bouanga, who could be headed to Liga MX. So, the transfer market really percolating. Doug, as long as I have you and we're talking MLS rules, I have to ask, Are you in favor of this calendar switch to match the European calendar? I know it's been hotly debated.
Yeah. I don't know. And what I think doesn't really matter, because I think it's going to happen. I mean, I think that we're going to see it happen probably in 2027 after the World Cup. I mean, all indications I've had, everyone that I've talked to seems to think that it's a matter of when and not if. I know the league delayed its vote at the All-Star game, the Board of Governors, they haven't voted for it, but it seems like it's something that's going to happen. There will be some obvious challenges for the clubs that are in cold weather climates in the winter: Chicago, Montreal, Toronto, Minnesota. But it's, as other people have pointed out, the league plays, starts in February and plays to December right now. So, I know that you're switching, the best part of the season for ticket sales this summer and taking some of that summer off. But we have so many tournaments in the middle of the summer now anyway. The MLS is on hiatus because of the League's Cup now. We had just finished the Club World Cup a few weeks ago, Gold Cup before that. There's players missing from teams. So I think it's another sign of the league's growth. There'll be some challenges along the way to mitigate some of the weather issues that are unique to North America and that folks in Europe really don't understand. They don't get how cold it can be for how long in January and February in northern North America. But it is something by all accounts, it is going to happen at some point in the next few years here. So we all better get used to the idea because it's coming.
I know I hit you with a little bit of a curveball there going off rundown, but unlike Anthony Volpe, you can handle curveballs just fine. Doug, one programming note. That was a bitter Yankee fan comment I had to slip in there. One programming note before we say goodbye. This upcoming Saturday, we will bring the curtain down on another summer of soccer on Fox with the Copa América Femenina final. Will be Brazil against Colombia in Quito, Ecuador. Brazil have won 8 of 9 previous editions of this competition. We beat Uruguay 5-1 in the semis. However, we played Colombia earlier in this tournament. It was 0-0. And the last Copa America final was a hard-fought 1-0 Brazil win over Colombia. So Colombia has really closed the gap in recent years, and they have players like Linda Caicedo. They are more than capable of winning this one. So I'm expecting a tough match. Are you going to have your eye on that one, Brazil-Colombia in the Copa America final?
Absolutely, Mosse, and I think as much as I like Colombia, and we were down under at the Women's World Cup a couple summers ago, and I think we all fell in love with that Colombian team and in general, and Linda Caicedo in particular. What a player! So the two best teams, the teams that we thought were the two best all along in the final, can't ask for anything better than that. I think it'll be a great match. I do think, Mosse, that your Brazilians are going to come out on top. They've been the standard bearer in South America for many years, and I don't think that's going to change. 5
p.m. Eastern on FS1. John Strong and Lori Lindsay on the call. I'll be there working it. Doug, we've come to the end of today's episode. You had one previous appearance as a co-host, and you knocked it out of the park that day. We were all wondering, would there be a bit of a sophomore slump this time? But no, you knocked it out of the park again. Terrific job, my friends. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks very much for the kind words, Mosse. Big shoes to fill as always, but I'm happy to jump in and help out anytime.
Alexi, we think we'll be back next week, so stay tuned for that. Until then, I can't recall what he does at the end of these shows, but yeah, it's a smash button somewhere and size the day.
Smash, yeah.
Take care, everybody.